I'm getting ready for a craft sale next weekend that is raising money for charity. So I'm digging into my scrap bin to sew a selection of items that are quick, crafty, and I think will sell well. Hi, I'm Christine. Welcome. I have two definite projects that I would like to make. This sale is a combination craft and bake sale, and I love cooking. I'm not such a big one for baking, and I want to contribute something, so that is the perfect opportunity to whip out some quick, cute, crafty projects. Since we're very close to the end of the school year and to one of the U.S.'s biggest national holidays, I'm talking Mother's Day, I thought this would be a good opportunity to market some of these small items as teacher gifts or something priced that children would be able to buy something for their mother, especially if they're with their dad who has his wallet. I already have a start on one of the items, and I'm going to be batch sewing these items. That's not usually my jam, but I think that's the only way I'm going to be able to get through a lot of items and develop some inventory. So the first item that I'm going to be making is little keychains in varying lengths. I have made a start. I love this really fun, kind of looks preppy, green and blue plaid. I think this is so cute, and I've already made a few of these. I've used a really good quality hardware. This is a beefy swivel clip. I purchased these from Cam Snaps, and I have added a keychain ring to it. I like this size personally myself, that you can slip 2 or 3 fingers through. It's easy to hold it while you're carrying things. Heavy keys really handy. This is the size I prefer, but I'm going to be making them in different sizes. There's going to be a good variety since I'm using scrap. I'm also going to be keeping an eye on color and the content of the fabric so that hopefully it'll sell better. People will see something that sparks, yes, that would be good for whoever they're gifting it to. I plan to display them in these boxes so people can dig through, and I'm thinking of pricing them something like $6 each or 3 for $15, and that would be great for a teacher gift or for Mother's Day. I will make some that are lanyard length, and also I'm going to be sure to include the male teachers. Before Charlie was a professor, he was a school teacher, and very often he got gifts that were definitely geared for a woman. I have some Clemson fabric and some more masculine fabric that I'll make sure I will put a few of those in with this. The other gift item I want to sew to sell is little gift card holders. That is perfect because it's quick, and the only material you need is fabric, interfacing, and a cam snap or Velcro. I do have loads of cam snaps in various colors, so for me this is scrappy and it won't cost a lot of money. I need to make these quick, and I don't want to spend more money creating something to sell. Otherwise, I would just donate the money to the charity itself. I am toying with making some hair bows. I'm not sure if I have any barrettes in my stash. It's a super quick make, very cute, and I think it would be a good little money maker, but I'll have to see on this. I can get carried away, and I need to remind myself I don't have to create the inventory for the entire booth. I have a full weekend and week ahead, so I will see what I can get done in this afternoon. I thought I would take you along with me for part of the making so you can keep me company and we can chat as we go. I'm going to show you how I make these cuties. If you have any recommendations for good crafty items to sew to sell or create to sell, please leave them in the comments section below. I probably won't have time for this sale, but there's always another one in the fall. So let's head over to the sewing room. I pulled out a big pile of woven fabric scraps, and I thought what I had might not be enough, and it turns out I had a gracious plenty. The thing about fabric scraps is if you really like a piece of fabric and you've held onto the scraps to make something out of it, you cut it up, you have another pile of smaller fabric scraps, and just can't seem to throw it away. I have these little offcuts that are smaller than either of the projects I'm working on today, but I thought, ooh, that would be a really cute zipper tab or something that requires only 2.5 by 1.5 inches. And so I'm saving them. My pile has definitely gone down some, but not dramatically. One of the things I discovered as I was sewing these, I was trying to use up my scraps, just cutting the width by whatever length I had. And I wound up with some key fobs that are too short to be lanyards, but really too long to function well as a wristlet. So I decided I was going to concentrate on making uniform sizes. This would do two things. It would make construction much easier, much quicker, since I do have a limited amount of time, and I'd be sure that I know that I'm going to get something I'd like. For the wristlet size, I'm cutting them 16 inches long, 4 inches wide. I'm using the 4 inches because I have these beefy swivel clasps that are 1 inch wide, and you need to have your fabric cut 4 times whatever the width of this opening. I do have here some 3/4 inch wide. I'm going to use this on a few, and I'm going to tell you why in a moment. And so for this distance, I would need a 3 inch wide strip. So let me show you what I've got so far. In addition to the wristlets, I really prefer this length for myself. I'm cutting these 8 inches long by 4 inches wide. Into the swivel hooks, you're going to need some type of interface. And again, I went to my scraps and I picked out 2. I have some Annie's Soft and Stable in little offcuts, and I also had some of this Thermolam. It is a Pellon product. It's an iron-on fusible fleece. I have done 1 keychain out of this, and I've done a couple out of the foam. I very much prefer the foam, and let me show you why. I think it gives it a much more of a luxurious look to it. The padding, I feel like it really fills out the fabric. It feels nice. It looks a little more luxurious. This one, I'm on the fence as to whether I'll include this in the sale items. It's a little floppier. It doesn't stand as proud as this does. I just don't think it looks as nice. I have plenty of weird offcuts of the foam. I caught a lot of 1 inch strips of the foam. Some of these will be cut down for the smaller key fobs, and some will be used for this length. So let me take you down to the cutting mat and I'll show you my production line and how these go together. So I've cut my fabric 4 inches wide by 16 inches. This fabric was a little shy. I will be cutting this down, but for demonstration purposes, I have it 4 inches. Then I fold it in half, give it a press, and then I'm going to fold each of these edges in towards the middle, like so, and it will look like this. And then that will be folded again in half. Now this particular print, I'm going to cut this down to use the 3/4 inch opening because I don't like the pattern placement. You notice how all my foil X's, which are the pretty aspect, are right here sitting on the edge of the crease. I don't think that's the most attractive placement. To press this out, I'm going to cut it down to 3 inches, and I'm going to be careful of the pattern placement so that when I make my folds, that this is the highlight of the fabric and it is seen, visible. Let me show you on this Clemson one. You see how I have the paws really showing on this fabric? I want those X's not to be off scooted way to the left. So I've pressed it in 4, then I can open it up. I have my 1 inch of foam, and I'm going to place it here to where one edge is hitting the center crease and the other edge is going to be covered over. So I might fuss with this a little bit to get it placed well and clip as I go. And I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to clip along the side. And let me show you one that is already done. So here I have one that is already clipped. I'm going to take my swivel clasp and I'll pay attention if there's a right or wrong side or a side that I prefer. On this one, I really don't. And I'm going to place it inside and I'm going to clip it, keep it all together. And since I'm batch sewing, I'm going to prepare a bunch of these to this stage. The reason we cut our foam a little bit short of the length of the fabric, let me give you a close-up of this, is we're going to bring this end and this end. I'm going to open up all along the folds. I might need to move a clip down. And I'm going to bring these edges together, right sides together. I'm not twisting this, I'm just bringing it right sides together. And then I am going to clip them along the top. You can clip or pin. So open it up, put a pin in there, and then it'll look something like this one. See how I have it pinned all along the top? And I am going to sew, depending on where I have stopped my foam, I'm going to sew this particular one at about a 1/2 inch seam allowance, sew it together, and then you got a nice neat seam and you don't have as much bulk. Here's the join. It's not too visible, not too noticeable. This is where the swivel clasp will rest when we finish the keychain. I've clipped the open side. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew about 1/8 of an inch on the edge to close this keychain. I'm going to use a longer stitch length, probably a 3.0, and I'm going to move my way around. And as I get close to the swivel clasp, I will just unclip, move it along so that it does not get in the way. I'm going to sew all down one side, and then to make it look nice and neat and tidy, I am also going to sew the other edge. It really does need to be sewn on both edges, especially with this puffy foam in here. It looks better and more finished, more polished. So let's go down to the sewing machine and I'll show you how I do this. Even though this is a quick project, I want to take a few moments to make sure I make this nice and neat. I'm selling this. I want it to be my better work. Nothing sloppy. I also want to be very consistent on my stitch line. So I'm going to take a moment to line this up. I'm lining the end of this fabric up with this inside portion of my presser foot. And I think I like where it is now. I've moved my needle over to the right 1 millimeter, and I will do the same when I go to this side. I'm going to hold the tail of my thread just so it doesn't get caught up in my stitching. And I think I'm going to reduce my speed. Let's see if I can sew this slow. I'm also starting and I'm going to be ending here near the seam so that it'll be covered up and won't be as noticeable. The needle down position. One of the things about using clips, if you don't take them out before you get to the edge of the presser foot, sometimes they can shift your work. So I need to be mindful of that. I can use my stylus to help me keep things on track. And I'm just going to sew all the way around. Trying to neatly keep these edges together. You see, as I get close to this, I can move it down. Move it out of the way. Take a quick look at this. Trim my threads. I'm going to sew the other side. I've come all the way around. Now I want to move this to where the seam is. Here we go. I'm going to line this up and I'm going to stitch across here to keep this in place. And I think I'm going to use my hump jumper to help keep things neat. I don't want it to be messy. So I'm going to slide that underneath. And there we go. The next item I'm sewing for our little craft sale is a gift card wallet. Could also be used as a credit card wallet, or if you have store cards, you can keep them in this, pop them in your bag, and they're ready to go. You can give this with a gift card, and then the recipient can use it for future uses, or they may re-gift it in a gift card they're given to someone else. I love these, and they're quick and easy to make. All you need is a fabric, a lining fabric, and some type of interfacing. I have used SPF 101. This is Pellon Shape Flax. I keep my weird offcuts, and I've put them to good use. I have cut out about 9 or 10 of these. Since I'm making so many of these card wallets, I decided to make myself a template. I used a piece of cardboard that I had hanging around in the sewing room. I used to store my fabric on these comic book boards, decided that wasn't for me. You can click here and see about how I store my fabric. I made my template. It is 8 inches long, 5 inches wide. I found the center point, and you can see my mark here. And then I made a mark on each end about 1 inch and 1/8 down. And then I used a straight edge to make them even. And that's my template. To batch cut these, I used my template to cut the outer pieces, my lining pieces, and then I did cut out my interfacing and trimmed it a little bit shy of the width of the fabric. And one of the good things about these scraps is you can piece these together and nobody's gonna know. I'll show you here on this one. I've done it on several of these where I just needed a little more along this edge. I cut some pieces, ironed it down, I'm good to go. So I've placed my fabric right sides together and I have pinned it all around. Here you can see I've marked an opening with a friction pin. That'll come off with heat. It's on the wrong side of the interior lining. So even if it were to leave a mark, nobody's going to see that. It's going to be so deep inside the wallet. I'm going to leave this opening. I'm going to sew all the way around, and then I'm going to turn it right side out and give it a press. Here's one where I've gotten to that step. Here's my opening. I made sure to make it nice and neat so it's as invisible as possible. And then I am going to be folding this, and I do this 100% by eyeball. I'll bring the bottom up and the top down. Let me measure that for you. That is, okay, so this bottom fold is turned up 2.5 inches, and then I just fold the top down. Here's one ready for the next step, and I have folded it up about 2.5 inches, and then this will fold down on the finish, but I want to stitch it first. I want to close up the sides, and I want to give it a nice finished look around the edge. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to sew, probably using a 3.0 stitch length. I'm going to sew up around the top, down the bottom. I'm not going to sew down here. It's not necessary, and it'll be quick and easy. And then it will look like this. It's all sewn down. It's the perfect size. Hopefully a Clemson fan will want to buy this. I did make sure to line up my stripes. Even though this is a scrappy project, it doesn't mean I shouldn't be neat. And then I'm going to install a cam snap here. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. I love the cam snaps. They're easy to use. They're very secure. I didn't have any of this purple color, so my choice was between orange or white. I think either would look nice. I have plenty of the orange, so that's what I'm going to use. The tools I'm using today, I've got a handheld cam press that only works with these number 20 cam snaps, the plastic ones. And then I need one snap here. You're going to need a cap for the top. And I like to be consistent. It doesn't matter which one you put where, but I always put the female on the top. That's the same as when I'm constructing a garment. And then I put the male to receive it on the whatever the bottom layer is. And that way I don't have to think too hard about it, and I'm consistent. You need a male and a female, and you need a cap for each end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I am on center and that I have this how I want it. See how this is lined up? I want to keep it lined up. And I am just going to poke a hole. My kit came with this awl. It's pretty sharp. I'm going to pierce it. I don't need to keep this clipped anymore. And I'm going to take my cap and I'm going to put the prong through that hole. The smooth cap is on the outside. And then I'm taking the female end, which looks like this, and I am going to stick it inside here. And then I'm going to seat the cap into this round divot disc, the black disc. I'm going to make sure it's seated properly before I press and give it a squeeze. And all it does is smash the prong so that it seals it in and keeps it to where it's going to stay where it needs to be. And I'm just going to put my thumb on this and give it a little wiggle so I can see something of an indent here. I'm going to go in the center and poke a hole. Now I confess I usually poke through both layers at the same time. So I'm going to put this with the round side to the inside of my little wallet. Poking the prong through. I'm just going to kind of test it first, make sure that I got it accurate. I did. I'm going to take the stud or the male side and put it on top. I'm going to put my little hand press in here, give it a squeeze, and there you go. Another one finished. Only about 8 or 9 more to go. I'm happy with what I've accomplished. I think if I put all of this together, somewhere between 2 and 3 hours of work between cutting out, interfacing, and sewing these up, I ended up with 9 wallets, 10 keychains. I do have more cut out. I just ran out of time today. I need to get ready for my sewing. I'm doing a class tomorrow at 5/8 seams, and I need to make sure that I make time for myself. I do have a favorite of everything I've made. I love these rifle paper canvas card wallets. Great for a gift card. You could reuse it to hold cards or doing a quick shopping. So cute in the purse. So I've got these, and I have 2 more that I used linen. So they're really nice, a little bit extra. And then I've got some in a good quality cotton. So we'll see how well these sell. I'm not gonna lie, I was really thinking of holding one of these back for myself and one for my daughter-in-law, Allie, but I think I'm gonna put them all in the sale. I'd love to know what you're working on, and I will see you soon.